When a single dance becomes a death warrant, power is the only protection. Adrian Vale didn't build Chicago's underworld by making mistakes. But the woman asking him to dance, her hand trembling, her ex-boyfriend's eyes burning holes across the room, she was about to become his most dangerous decision. One waltz, one silent claim. One moment that would drag them both into a war where art, betrayal, and blood painted the same canvas. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain hit Chicago like it had something to prove. Adrian Vale watched it streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Monarch Lounge, each drop catching the amber glow from the chandeliers inside. 23 stories up, the city sprawled beneath him, a grid of lights and shadows, power and desperation. He'd built his empire in those shadows, controlled it from rooms exactly like this one. Mr. Vale? Adrian didn't turn. The man behind him, Marcus Webb, owner of 3 shipping companies and currently drowning in debt to the wrong people, could wait another 10 seconds. Let him sweat. The contracts, Adrian said finally, his voice low and measured. He turned from the window, adjusting the cuff of his charcoal suit. You brought them? Marcus fumbled with a leather briefcase, his fingers shaking enough to make the clasps click twice before opening. Right here. Everything you asked for. Adrian moved across the private lounge with the kind of calm that made people nervous. Not rushed, not slow. Inevitable. He took the documents, scanned them with eyes that caught every clause, every carefully buried concession. Marcus had signed over more than shipping routes. He'd signed over his autonomy. Smart man would have read the fine print. Desperate men never did. Your signature here, Adrian said, sliding the papers across the marble-top table. And here. This gives you controlling interest? Yes. Adrian's gaze lifted, steady and cold. You came to me, Marcus, not the other way around. The Volkov family was offering you concrete shoes and a lake view. I'm offering you a future. Limited, supervised, but breathing. Marcus signed. Adrian watched the pen move across paper, each stroke another thread in the web that held Chicago together under his hand. People thought power was loud. Guns, threats, spectacle. That was theatrics. Real power was quiet. It was contracts signed in expensive lounges while rain hammered the windows. It was knowing which pressure points to push and exactly how hard. We're done, Adrian said, collecting the documents. My people will handle the transition. Don't make me regret being reasonable. Marcus left without another word, and Adrian was alone again with the rain and the city and the weight of control that never really lifted. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, neat, and returned to the window. His phone buzzed. A text from Garrett, his head of security. Situation at the main floor. Non-urgent. Your call. Adrian almost ignored it. He had 3 more meetings tonight. A warehouse situation in Pilsen that needed his attention, and a congressman who'd forgotten which campaign contributions came with strings attached. But something about non-urgent from Garrett felt wrong. The man didn't send unnecessary messages. He downed the scotch and headed for the elevator. The Monarch's main floor was all velvet and vintage glamour, the kind of place where Chicago's elite pretended they weren't doing business while absolutely doing business. A jazz quartet played near the bar, smooth and understated. Conversations hummed beneath the music, deals wrapped in laughter and expensive wine. Adrian spotted Garrett immediately, 6'3", built like he'd learned restraint the hard way, standing near the coat check with his arms crossed. His eyes tracked something across the room. What am I looking at? Adrian asked, coming up beside him. Garrett nodded toward the far corner near the windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. The woman in the green dress. She's been here 40 minutes, ordered 1 drink, hasn't touched it, keeps watching the entrance. Adrian followed the sightline. She was hard to miss, even in a room full of Chicago's polished and powerful. Dark hair pulled back, simple but elegant. The dress was emerald silk, understated except for the way it caught the light when she moved. But it wasn't the dress that held his attention. It was the way she held herself. Upright, composed. Except her hands gave her away, fingers tight around the stem of her wine glass like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. She's scared, Adrian said. Yeah, and the guy who keeps circling her knows it. Adrian's gaze shifted, landing on a man in an expensive but ill-fitted suit making another pass by her table. Mid-30s, decent build, the kind of manufactured confidence that came from never being told no. He said something as he passed. The woman's jaw tightened, but she didn't look at him. Ex-boyfriend, Garrett said. Overheard him earlier. She told him to leave twice. He's not leaving. Adrian should have walked away. He had actual problems, the kind that involved money, territory, and people who solved disagreements with bullets. This was personal drama, messy and small. But something about the way she sat there, refusing to run, refusing to break, it caught in his chest like a hook. "I'll handle it," Adrian said. Garrett raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Adrian was already moving. Deck. Elena Brooks was counting her breaths. In, out, in, out. She'd learned the technique in a therapist's office 2 years ago, back when panic attacks were a nightly occurrence and sleep was a foreign concept. The therapist said it would help. It did. Sometimes. Tonight wasn't one of those times. He's just trying to scare you. He can't do anything here. Too many people. But Caleb had always been good at pushing boundaries, finding the edges of what he could get away with. 3 months since she'd ended it. 3 months of blocked numbers, ignored emails, and rearranged schedules to avoid places he might be. She'd thought coming here, a high-end lounge full of witnesses, public and safe, would keep him at bay. She'd thought wrong. Elena. His voice made her skin crawl. She didn't look up. "I know you can hear me," Caleb said, stopping beside her table. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same brand he'd worn when they were together, the scent she used to find comforting and now associated with the sound of him yelling. "We need to talk." "No," Elena said quietly. "We don't. You can't avoid me forever. I'm not avoiding you. I'm done with you. There's a difference." Caleb's hand landed on the back of her chair, not touching her, just close. A reminder of how easily he could. "Don't be dramatic. I just want 5 minutes." "I don't." "Elena," she said no. The voice came from behind Caleb, low and calm and carrying a weight that made the air shift. Elena looked up. The man standing there didn't look like he belonged in the same room as Caleb. Not because of his clothes, though the suit was clearly expensive, tailored to fit him like it was built there, but because of the way he occupied space. Still. Centered. Dangerous in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Caleb turned, and Elena saw the moment he sized the stranger up, trying to decide if he was a threat or an annoyance. "This is a private conversation," Caleb said. "No," the man replied. "It's harassment, and it's over." Caleb's jaw worked. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who doesn't repeat himself." The man's eyes, dark, unreadable, flicked to Elena. "You all right?" Elena's pulse hammered. She didn't know this man, didn't know why he was stepping in, but the steadiness in his gaze, the complete lack of performance in his tone, it was the first thing that had felt solid all night. "I'm fine," she said, then corrected herself. "I will be." The man nodded once, then looked back at Caleb. "Leave." "Listen, buddy, I'm not your buddy, and you're not listening." He stepped forward, closing the space between them, not aggressive, just immovable. "You're going to walk out of here, you're not going to come back, and you're going to forget you ever had a reason to bother her." Caleb laughed, but it was thin. "Or what?" The man didn't answer. He just waited, and something about the silence, the absolute certainty in it, made Caleb's bravado crack. "This is insane," Caleb muttered, backing up a step. "You're insane." He left. Not quickly, but he left. Elena exhaled, and it came out shaky. The man turned to her, and his expression softened, just barely. "You need a minute?" "I need—" Elena stopped, pressing her fingers to her temple. "I don't know what I need." "Bourbon helps." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "Does it?" "Not really, but it buys time." He gestured to the empty chair across from her. "May I?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. He sat, and for a moment they just existed in the silence, her trying to calm her racing heart, him watching the room like he was cataloging exits and threats. "Thank you," Elena said finally. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." "So why did you?" He considered the question, his gaze steady on hers. You looked like you were handling it, but you shouldn't have to. Something about the way he said it, no grandstanding, no expectation of gratitude, settled something in her chest. I'm Elena. Adrian. She studied him, this stranger who'd stepped into her disaster without hesitation. You don't seem like the white knight type. I'm not. His mouth curved just slightly. But I don't like bullies. The jazz quartet shifted into something slower, and the lounge's energy softened with it. Couples moved toward the small dance floor near the windows, and Elena watched them with something that felt like longing. She used to love dancing, before Caleb, before she'd learned to make herself smaller. Adrian followed her gaze. You want to dance? Elena blinked. What? You keep looking at the floor, and your ex is standing near the bar, pretending he's not watching you. Adrian stood, offering his hand. So let's give him something to watch. Elena's heart kicked. You don't have to, but if you do, I promise he won't come near you again tonight. She looked at his hand, steady, certain, waiting. She took it. The thing about dancing with someone you don't know is that it strips away pretense. No history, no expectations, just movement and proximity, and the question of whether you trust the person leading. Adrian's hand settled at her waist, respectful but firm, and Elena's breath caught. Not from fear, from the sudden, startling realization that she felt safe. You're tense, Adrian said quietly as they began to move. I don't usually dance with strangers who rescue me from bad exes. First time for everything. They moved across the floor, and Adrian led with the kind of confidence that didn't demand. It guided. Elena found herself following, her body remembering rhythms she thought she'd forgotten. He's watching, Adrian said. I know. Good. Let him. Elena looked up, meeting his eyes. Why are you doing this? You asked me to dance. You offered. Same result? His expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his gaze, curiosity maybe, or recognition. You're not running. Most people would have left the second he showed up. I'm tired of running. Then don't. The music swelled and Adrian pulled her slightly closer, not invasive, just present, solid. Elena felt the eyes on them, felt Caleb's gaze burning from across the room, and for the first time in months, she didn't flinch. This is a statement, she said softly. Yes. You don't even know me. I know enough. What do you know? Adrian's gaze held hers steady and dark. That you're stronger than you think, and that whoever he is, he doesn't deserve another second of your fear. Something in Elena's chest cracked open, not breaking, opening. The song ended, but neither of them moved immediately. The moment stretched, fragile, and waited, until Adrian stepped back and released her hand. Thank you, Elena said again. Don't thank me yet, she frowned. What does that mean? Adrian's expression shifted, still calm, but colder now. His gaze tracked past her shoulder toward the bar where Caleb stood, and something dangerous settled into his features. It means, Adrian said quietly, that men like him don't take rejection well, and you just rejected him in front of a room full of people. Elena's stomach dropped. You think he'll come back? I know he will. Adrian's eyes returned to hers. The question is whether you're going to let him, or whether you're going to let me handle it. Handle it how? However it needs to be handled. Elena should have been afraid, should have walked away from this stranger who spoke about violence like it was weather, predictable, manageable, inevitable, but all she felt was exhausted. I don't want more trouble, she said. Then you shouldn't have to deal with it. Adrian, give me your number. She stared at him. What? Your number, he repeated. So when he escalates, and he will, you don't have to handle it alone. Elena's mind raced. This was insane. She didn't know this man, didn't know what handling it meant in his world, but she also knew Caleb, knew the look in his eyes tonight, knew that this wasn't over. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and handed it to him. Adrian entered his number, then called himself so he'd have hers. If he contacts you, you tell me. If he shows up somewhere you are, you tell me. If you even think you see him, you tell me. You're serious. Completely. Why? Adrian handed back her phone, and for a moment, his expression softened again. because someone should have done this for you a long time ago. Before Elena could respond, Garrett appeared at Adrian's shoulder, his face tight. We need to go, Garrett said quietly. Situation in Pilsen just escalated. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He looked back at Elena. You'll be safe here. Garrett will make sure you get home. I don't need aught. Yes, you do. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. He turned to Garrett. Make sure she gets home safe, then meet me at the warehouse. Garrett nodded. Adrian started to leave, then paused, looking back at Elena one more time. Use that number. Then he was gone, cutting through the crowd like smoke, and Elena was left standing in the middle of the dance floor with her heart racing and her phone warm in her hand. 3 hours later, Elena sat in her apartment, staring at the contact Adrian had entered into her phone. Just his first name. No last name. No context. Who are you? Her apartment was small but hers. A third-floor walk-up in Wicker Park, filled with half-finished art projects and books stacked on every surface. Her sanctuary. The place she'd rebuilt herself after leaving Caleb. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know where you live. Elena's blood went cold. She recognized the phrasing. Caleb's phrasing. He used to say it when they fought, when she threatened to leave. I know where you live. I know where you work. You can't hide from me. Another buzz. You embarrassed me tonight. That wasn't smart. Her hands shook. Another. We're not done, Elena. She stared at the messages, her breath coming faster, panic clawing at her throat. Then she looked at Adrian's number. Use that number. She typed, he's texting me, threatening me. The response came in seconds. Send me the screenshots. Don't respond to him. Elena did, her fingers fumbling. Then she sat in the silence of her apartment, waiting, wondering what she'd just set in motion. Her phone rang. Adrian. Are you safe? He asked immediately. I'm home. Doors are locked. Good. Stay there. I'm sending someone to watch your building tonight. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. This is what escalation looks like, Elena. He's testing boundaries. If you don't set them now, he won't stop. What are you going to do? What I said I'd do. Handle it. Adrian, trust me. The line went quiet for a moment, and Elena could hear rain in the background, the hum of a car engine. I don't know you, she said quietly. Not yet. But you're asking me to trust you anyway. Yes, Elena closed her eyes. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake, that getting involved with a stranger, a man who clearly wielded power like a weapon, was dangerous. But the alternative was Caleb, and months more of looking over her shoulder. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Adrian repeated. Then softer. Get some sleep. You're safe tonight. He hung up. Elena sat in the darkness of her apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. Across the city, in the warehouse in Pilsen that smelled like oil and rust and old blood, Adrian stood over a man who'd made the mistake of skimming from a shipment. You stole from me, Adrian said calmly. The man, Danny, small-time, stupid, was tied to a chair, his face already swelling from where Garrett had made the point that lying wasn't an option. It was just a little, Danny gasped. I was going to pay it back. You stole from me, Adrian repeated, and then you lied about it. Those are two separate problems. Please, Mr. Vale. Adrian crouched down, meeting Danny's eyes. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me who you're working with, because you're not smart enough to have done this alone. And then you're going to disappear for a while, somewhere far from Chicago. If I see you again, we won't have this conversation. Danny talked. Of course he did. And when Adrian left the warehouse 20 minutes later, he had names, connections, and another thread to pull in the web of his city. But his mind wasn't on Danny. It was on a woman in a green dress who'd asked him to dance. A woman who didn't run. A woman who, for reasons Adrian didn't fully understand yet, he'd decided was under his protection. Garrett climbed into the car beside him. She's secure. 2 of our guys on her building. Good. You want to tell me what we're doing? Adrian looked out at the rain-slicked streets. Sending a message. To who? To anyone who thinks they can touch what's mine. Garrett was quiet for a moment. She's not yours, boss. Not yet, Adrian said. Then quieter, almost to himself. But she will be. Mac. The next morning, Elena woke to 17 missed calls from Caleb and a single text from Adrian. Check your door. Confused, she wrapped herself in a robe and went to her apartment door. Sitting on the mat was a small package, expensive paper, no return address. Inside was a business card for a security company, along with a handwritten note in clean, precise script. Your locks are inadequate. They'll install better ones today. No charge. Don't argue. Elena stared at the note, something warm and complicated twisting in her chest. She texted back, "You can't just do things like this." His response, "I can. I did. Let them install the locks. This is insane. This is necessary. He's not going to stop, Elena. But neither am I." She should have been angry, should have pushed back. But instead, she found herself calling the number on the card and scheduling the installation. And when the technicians arrived 2 hours later, professional, efficient, clearly expensive, she let them work, wondering what kind of man could orchestrate all this with a single phone call. A dangerous one, her rational mind whispered. A careful one, another part answered. By noon, her apartment had new locks, a reinforced door frame, and a security camera pointed at her hallway. By evening, she had another text from Adrian. Better? Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're not done. What does that mean? It means your ex needs to understand that you're not alone anymore, that there are consequences. Adrian, I don't want anyone hurt. He won't be, but he will be very, very careful. Elena stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She should have been terrified, should have blocked Adrian's number and pretended last night never happened. But she didn't. Instead, she texted, "What happens now?" The response came quickly. "Now you live your life, and I make sure you can." Bye. 2 days passed. Elena went to work at the conservation lab where she restored paintings, her hands steady as she cleaned centuries-old varnish from a landscape that had hung in darkness for decades. She loved this work, bringing light back to forgotten things, revealing beauty that had been buried. Caleb didn't text again. Didn't call. The silence should have been a relief, but instead it felt like the pause before thunder. On the third day, her phone rang. Adrian. "How are you?" he asked. "Okay." "Quiet." "Good. That's good." A pause. "I need to see you." Elena's pulse jumped. Why? Because quiet doesn't last, and because there are things you should know before this goes further. What things? Not over the phone. Can you meet me tonight? Elena should have said no, should have drawn a line. But the truth was, she'd been thinking about him constantly, the stranger who'd stepped between her and danger, who'd made her feel safe for the first time in years. "Where?" she asked. "I'll send a car, 7 o'clock. "Adrian, trust me, Elena." And despite everything, she did. The car that picked her up was sleek and black, the kind of vehicle that cost more than her annual salary. The driver was silent, professional, and Elena watched Chicago slide past the windows as they drove north, away from her neighborhood and into areas where the buildings grew taller and the lights grew brighter. They stopped in front of a high-rise overlooking the lake. The driver opened her door. "Mr. Vale is expecting you, top floor." Elena's heart hammered as she rode the elevator up, watched the numbers climb, tried to steady her breathing. The doors opened directly into a penthouse, all glass and steel and understated luxury. And standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, was Adrian. He turned as she stepped out, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Not cold, not distant. Something warmer, more complicated. "You came," he said. "You asked." "You could have said no." "I could have." Elena moved into the space, taking in the art on the walls, real pieces, museum quality, each one chosen with care. "But I wanted answers." "Then sit. Ask." Elena sat on a leather sofa that probably cost more than her car. Adrian poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one before sitting across from her. "Who are you?" Elena asked. "You know who I am. I know your first name. I know you have enough pull to install security in my apartment in 2 hours. I know you're not afraid of men like Caleb. She met his eyes. But I don't know who you are. Adrian was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. I broker deals, manage interests, solve problems for people who can't solve them themselves. That's vague. It's intentional. Adrian, I'm not a good man, Elena. His voice was quiet but firm. I've done things that would make you walk out of here and never look back. I've built my life on leverage, control, and knowing which rules can be bent and which need to be broken. You asked who I am. That's who I am. Elena's chest tightened. Are you telling me to leave? I'm telling you the truth. Because if this continues, if you stay under my protection, you need to understand what that means. And what does it mean? Adrian leaned forward, his gaze locked on hers. It means Caleb will never touch you again. But it also means you'll exist in my world. And my world isn't safe. It's not clean. And once you're in it, walking away gets complicated. Elena should have been scared. Every warning bell in her head should have been screaming, but all she felt was tired of being prey. I'm already in it, she said quietly. The moment you stepped in at the Monarch, I was in it. You can still walk away. Can I? Elena's voice was steadier than she felt. Because Caleb's not going to stop. You said that yourself. So either I deal with him alone, or I trust you to help me. Those are my options. Adrian studied her, and something in his expression shifted. Respect, maybe, or recognition. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who needed saving, and instead, someone who's deciding to save herself, with help. The words hung between them, and Elena felt something click into place. Not dependence, partnership. So what happens now? She asked. Adrian set down his wine glass. Now I tell you what I've learned about Caleb, and then you decide how far you want me to go. Elena's stomach tightened. What did you learn? That he's not just obsessive, he's connected. His family has money, influence, and he's used both before to make problems disappear. What kind of problems? An ex-girlfriend in Milwaukee filed a restraining order 2 years ago. It vanished from the system. Another woman in Madison, similar story. Both cases sealed. Both women went quiet. Elena's blood ran cold. He paid them off. Or scared them off. Either way, he's done this before, and he knows how to make legal protections meaningless. So what do I do? Adrian's gaze was steady. You let me make him understand that this time is different, that you're not alone, that the cost of coming near you is higher than he's willing to pay. How? Leave that to me. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to demand details, but the truth was she was exhausted. Months of fear, months of looking over her shoulder, she was done. Okay, she whispered. Adrian nodded once. Then he stood and moved to the window, looking out at the city. There's something else you should know. What? You're not just under my protection because I'm being noble. I don't do noble. He turned, his expression unreadable. I'm doing this because when I saw you in that lounge, I saw someone who refused to break. And that... He paused. That's rare. Elena's heart stuttered. Adrian, you should go. The car will take you home. She stood but hesitated. Will I see you again? Yes. When? Soon. His expression softened just barely. Until then, you're safe. I promise. Elena left, the promise echoing in her head, wondering if she'd just made a deal with someone who could destroy her as easily as protect her, and wondering why she didn't care. Then, Caleb Bennett sat in his downtown condo staring at his phone. 17 calls to Elena. 43 texts. All unanswered. She was ignoring him, blocking him. And that bastard from the Monarch, whoever he was, had embarrassed him in front of half of Chicago's elite. Unacceptable. Caleb pulled up a contact. Marcus Chen, private investigator. He typed, need information on someone. Tall, dark suit, was at the Monarch Lounge 3 nights ago. Find out who he is. The response came quickly. Price? Whatever it takes. Caleb smiled. Elena thought she could hide behind some stranger. Thought she could just move on. She was wrong. And he was going to prove it. Marcus Chen was good at his job. 20 years as a private investigator had taught him how to find people who didn't want to be found, uncover secrets that were meant to stay buried, and deliver information without asking questions about what his clients planned to do with it. But when he started digging into the man from the Monarch Lounge, he hit a wall within 6 hours. Not a dead end. A wall. The kind built deliberately by people who understood how information worked and knew how to control it. He called Caleb back. "We need to talk." "You have something?" "Yeah. A warning." Marcus kept his voice low. "The guy you're asking about, his name is Adrian Vale, and you need to drop this. I'm paying you to find information, not give advice. I'm giving you both. Vale isn't someone you mess with. He's connected to half the power players in Chicago. The other half are scared of him." Caleb laughed. "You're telling me some businessman has you spooked?" "He's not a businessman, he's a broker. The kind who makes problems disappear, permanently." Marcus paused. "I did some asking around, quiet asking. 3 people told me to stop. One of them was a cop. You understand what I'm saying?" "I understand you're not doing your job. I'm doing my job. My job is telling you that Adrian Vale is off limits. Whatever you think happened at that lounge, let it go. Find another girl. This one's not worth it." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Send me what you have." "Caleb, send it. Then we're done." Marcus hung up and emailed over the thin file he'd compiled. Grainy photos from the Monarch's security footage, a few business registrations, consulting firms, investment groups, all deliberately vague, and a single police report from 4 years ago that had been buried so deep, Marcus had needed to call in 2 favors just to confirm it existed. Caleb opened the attachments and stared at Adrian Vale's face captured in pixelated surveillance footage. Calm, controlled, standing too close to Elena with his hand on her waist. The rage that bubbled up was familiar. White hot. Righteous. Elena was his. She'd always been his, and this bastard thought he could just step in and take what belonged to him? Caleb made another call, this time to someone who didn't ask questions and didn't give warnings. The voice that answered was rough. "Yeah? I need someone taught a lesson," Caleb said. "What kind of lesson?" "The kind that makes them back off. There's a woman. Someone's been playing protector. I want him to understand that's a bad idea." "This gonna come back on me?" "No, I'll make sure of it. $5,000, half up front." Caleb didn't hesitate. Done. He sent the money, forwarded Adrian's information, and sat back in his chair with a smile. Elena would see. She'd see that running to someone else didn't make her safe. It made everything worse. And when she came crawling back, begging for forgiveness, he'd decide whether she deserved it. The morning came gray and cold, the kind of Chicago autumn day where the wind off the lake cut through layers and made everyone walk faster. Elena stood in the conservation lab at the Art Institute, hands steady as she worked on a 17th century portrait that had spent decades in storage. The painting was a mess. Cracked varnish, water damage along one edge, and someone in the 1940s had attempted a restoration that involved techniques that made Elena wince. But beneath all that damage, there was something beautiful. A woman's face, half emerged from shadow, her expression caught between sorrow and defiance. Elena understood that expression now. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. "Dinner tonight, my place. 7. Not a question, a statement." Elena typed back, "That's not really asking." His response, "I know, will you come anyway?" She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was moving too fast, that she was getting pulled into something she didn't understand. But the alternative was going home to her apartment, triple-checking the new locks, and jumping at every footstep in the hallway. "Yes," she sent. "Good. The car will pick you up at 6:30. Elena set down her phone and returned to the painting, trying to focus, but her hands trembled slightly as she worked, and she had to stop twice to steady herself. "You okay?" Her coworker, Jessica, appeared at her shoulder. Mid-50s, sharp-eyed, with 30 years of restoration experience and zero tolerance for bullshit. "Fine," Elena said. "You've been jumpy all week. That ex still bothering you?" Elena hesitated. Jessica was one of the few people who knew about Caleb, about the months of harassment after the breakup. "It's handled." "Handled how?" "Just handled." Jessica studied her for a long moment. Be careful, Elena. Men who need handling don't usually go quiet on their own. I know. Do you? Jessica's voice softened. Because you've got that look, the one people get when they think they've found someone to fix their problems. And that never ends well. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say that this was different, that Adrian was different, but she couldn't because she didn't actually know if that was true. I'm being careful, she said instead. Jessica nodded, unconvinced, and returned to her own workstation. Elena went back to the painting, but the woman's face seemed to watch her now, that expression of sorrow and defiance, a mirror Elena wasn't sure she wanted to look into. Adrian spent the day doing what he always did, managing the invisible architecture of Chicago's power structure. A meeting with a union leader who needed convincing that a strike would hurt everyone. A phone call with a developer who'd forgotten that certain neighborhoods were under Adrian's protection. A quiet conversation with a judge about a case that needed to go a particular direction. Normal. Routine. The kind of work that kept the city running the way Adrian wanted it to run. But his mind kept drifting back to Elena. To the way she'd sat in his penthouse, chin up, refusing to be scared even as he'd told her exactly what kind of man he was. Most people heard the truth and ran. She'd heard it and stayed. That was dangerous. For both of them. You're distracted, Garrett's voice cut through his thoughts. They were in Adrian's office, a converted loft in the West Loop that served as his base of operations. All exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture and art that cost more than most people's houses. I'm focused, Adrian said. On the conservator? Adrian's gaze sharpened. Careful. I'm not judging. I'm asking if this is smart. Since when do I need your approval? You don't, but you usually think 3 moves ahead. This feels like you're reacting. Adrian set down the file he'd been reviewing. What's your point? My point is that we've got the Volkov family making noise about territory. The union situation in Pilsen isn't settled, and there's chatter about someone new moving product through the South Side without paying tribute. We've got actual problems, and you're spending resources on a woman who asked you to dance. She didn't just ask me to dance. No, she asked you to protect her, which is fine. We do that, but you're making this personal. Maybe it is personal. Garrett sighed. Boss, I know what I'm doing. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're getting attached. An attachment makes you vulnerable. Adrian stood, moving to the window. The city sprawled beneath him, familiar and ever-changing. His city. The one he'd built through careful planning and ruthless execution. Garrett was right. He usually thought 3 moves ahead. But with Elena, he wasn't thinking ahead. He was just moving. Check on the Caleb situation, Adrian said. I want to know if he's doing anything stupid. You think he will? Men like him always do. Garrett nodded and left, and Adrian was alone with the city and the growing certainty that Elena Brooks was going to change everything. Caleb's hired muscle was a man named Ray Kowalski, and he was exactly what you'd expect. Big, mean, and just smart enough to follow instructions. He'd done work like this before. Intimidation, roughing people up, sending messages. The target was some businessman named Adrian Vale. Ray didn't know much about him and didn't care. The job was simple. Catch Vale somewhere public enough to make a point, but private enough to avoid cameras, knock him around, deliver the message that he needed to back off, and walk away $5,000 richer. Easy money. Ray waited outside Vale's office building, watching the entrance. He'd done his homework. Vale usually left around 7, walked 2 blocks to a parking garage, drove himself home. No bodyguards visible, no security detail. Just a guy in an expensive suit who thought he was untouchable. 7:15 rolled around, and there he was. Tall, dark suit, walking with that particular kind of calm that rich people had. Ray followed at a distance, waiting for the right moment. The parking garage was perfect. Dim lighting, no attendant on the lower levels, security cameras that Ray had already spray-painted over. He caught up to Vale between 2 rows of cars. Hey, Vale! The man turned and Ray saw his face clearly for the first time. Not scared, not surprised. Just waiting. That should have been Ray's first warning. You need to stay away from Elena Brooks, Ray said, closing the distance. Her boyfriend wants you to understand that. Her ex-boyfriend, Vale corrected. And no. Ray blinked. What? No. I'm not staying away from her. Tell Caleb that trying to intimidate me was a mistake, and that if he's smart, he'll disappear for a while. Ray laughed. You got balls, I'll give you that. But you're not in a position to negotiate. He swung. It was a good punch, the kind that had dropped plenty of men before, but Vale moved. Not fast, not flashy, just shifted his weight and let the fist pass through empty air. Then his hand was on Ray's wrist, twisting, and Ray was on his knees before he registered what happened. Let me explain something, Vale said quietly. His voice was still calm, still measured, but there was iron underneath. You're going to leave. You're going to tell Caleb that this didn't work, and you're going to forget you ever took this job. Ray tried to jerk free. Vale's grip tightened, and something in Ray's wrist made a sound that sent pain shooting up his arm. Or, Vale continued, I make a phone call, and you spend the next 5 years in Stateville for that parole violation from 2019, your choice. Ray's blood went cold. How do you... I know everything about you, Ray. Where you live, where your sister works, how much you owe to the casino on Grand Avenue. You think you're the first person someone sent to threaten me? Vale released him and stepped back. You're not, and they all made the same mistake you're making now. What mistake? Thinking I'm an easy target. Ray scrambled backward, his wrist throbbing. This is insane. No, this is business. Now get out of my parking garage. Ray didn't need to be told twice. He ran, and he didn't stop until he was 3 blocks away, breathing hard, his wrist swelling. He called Caleb from a burner phone. We got a problem. Did you do the job? I tried. He knew I was coming, knew everything about me. This guy isn't normal. What the hell does that mean? It means you picked the wrong target. Vale's connected, really connected. He knew about my parole violation before I even swung at him. Caleb was silent for a long moment. You're saying you failed. I'm saying this is above my pay grade. You want him dealt with, you need someone better than me, or you need to back off. I'm not backing off. Then good luck. I'm out. Ray hung up, ditched the burner, and went home to ice his wrist. Caleb sat in his condo, staring at his phone, rage building like pressure in a closed system. Vale had embarrassed his hired muscle, had known he was coming, which meant Vale was watching, preparing. The thought should have scared him. Instead, it fed the anger. Elena thought she could hide behind this man, thought she could just move on with her life. But she couldn't. She was his, and he was going to prove it. He pulled up her work address. The Art Institute. Public building. Lots of people. Cameras. But people left work eventually, and cameras had blind spots. Caleb started planning. Elena stood in front of Adrian's building at 6:45, the evening wind pulling at her coat. The car had been early, and she'd spent the last 10 minutes trying to convince herself that this was fine, that having dinner with a man who clearly operated outside normal rules was a reasonable decision. She was failing at the convincing. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt longer than it should have. When the doors opened, Adrian was there, and Elena's breath caught. He changed out of his suit into dark slacks and a black button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Less formal, more real. You look nervous, he said. I am nervous. Don't be. He stepped back, gesturing for her to enter. It's just dinner. Elena moved into the penthouse, and the smell hit her immediately. Garlic, herbs, something rich simmering on the stove. You cook? When I have reason to. And I'm a reason? Apparently. He moved to the kitchen, an open space with industrial fixtures and marble counters. Wine? Yes, please. He poured 2 glasses of red and handed her one. Their fingers brushed, and Elena felt the contact like electricity. What happened to your hand? She asked, noticing the faint bruising on his knuckles. Minor disagreement. About? You. Elena's stomach dropped. Adrian. Caleb sent someone to convince me to back off. It didn't work. His tone was casual, like he was discussing the weather. He's escalating, which means we need to talk about next steps. Next steps? Sit, eat, then we'll talk. The meal was simple but perfect. Pasta with a wine reduction, fresh bread, a salad that tasted like it came from ingredients that cost more than Elena's weekly grocery budget. They ate mostly in silence, the tension between them building with each passing minute. Finally, Elena set down her fork. Tell me what's happening. Adrian finished his wine before answering. Caleb tried to have me intimidated. When that failed, he'll try something else. He's not rational, Elena. He's obsessive, which makes him dangerous. So what do? We make it clear that coming after you means coming after me, and that the cost of doing that is higher than he can pay. How? Adrian's gaze was steady. By making sure everyone in his life knows you're under my protection. His family, his friends, his business contacts. We make it public, undeniable. Elena's chest tightened. That's a lot. Yes. People will ask questions about us, about why you're involved. Let them ask. Adrian, I barely know you. I know. He leaned back, studying her. But you trusted me enough to come here, to let me install security in your apartment, to get in my car tonight. Why? Elena opened her mouth, then closed it. Because the truth was complicated, because she was tired of being afraid. Because when Adrian looked at her, she didn't feel small. Because you haven't asked me to be anyone other than who I am, she said finally. Something in his expression shifted, softened. No, I haven't. But this, going public, making it clear we're, whatever this is, that changes things. It does. What if I'm not ready for that? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. Then we do it anyway. Because ready or not, Caleb's not stopping. And the only way to protect you is to make the cost of touching you unacceptable. Elena joined him out of the window, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. And what do you get out of this? He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. That's the wrong question. What's the right question? The right question is, what do we both get? And the answer is that you get safety, peace, the ability to live without looking over your shoulder, and I get... He trailed off, and Elena waited, her heart pounding. You get what? She whispered. Someone who doesn't run, Adrian said quietly. Someone who sees exactly what I am and stays anyway. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Elena knew she should step back, should create distance, but instead she moved closer. I'm still scared, she admitted. Of me? Of this? Of what happens if it goes wrong? It might, Adrian said honestly, but it also might not. Elena looked up at him, this man who'd walked into her life like a storm and refused to leave. What happens now? Now you decide. Stay, and we do this together. Leave, and I'll still protect you, but from a distance. And if I stay, then you're mine. His voice was firm. And I'm yours. And everyone who needs to know will know. Elena's pulse raced. This was insane. A week ago, she'd been alone, afraid, jumping at shadows. Now she was standing in a penthouse with a man who operated in a world she didn't understand, being offered protection that came with strings she couldn't fully see. But she was so tired of being afraid. Okay, she said. Okay? I'm staying. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Something that looked almost like relief. Then we start tomorrow. Start what? Making sure everyone knows you're not alone anymore. He reached out, his hand settling at her waist, and Elena's breath hitched. Not from fear, from the sudden, overwhelming awareness of how close they were. Adrian, tell me to stop. She couldn't, didn't want to. Instead, she leaned in, closing the distance between them, and when his lips met hers, it felt like a decision. A choice. A line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. The kiss was slow, deliberate. Nothing rushed or desperate, just the careful exploration of something new and fragile and potentially dangerous. When they pulled apart, Elena's heart was racing. That was, she started. A complication, Adrian finished. Is that what you call it? Among other things. He stepped back, putting space between them, and Elena felt the loss immediately. You should go, before this gets more complicated. You're kicking me out? I'm making sure you have a choice. Stay longer, and you won't. Elena understood what he wasn't saying, that the pull between them was strong enough to make them both do things they shouldn't, that desire and protection were bleeding together in ways that could get messy. She should have left, should have taken the out he was offering, but she stayed rooted to the spot, looking at him, at this man who saw her clearly and wanted her anyway. "What if I don't want a choice?" she asked quietly. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Elena, what if I want this? Want you? You don't know what you're asking for." "Then tell me." He moved closer again, and the air between them felt charged. "You're asking to be part of my world, not just protected by it, but in it. And my world doesn't play by normal rules. It's dangerous, complicated. And once you're in, getting out is nearly impossible. Maybe I don't want out. You say that now. I mean it." Elena's voice was firm. "I'm tired of being careful, tired of being afraid. You said I'm yours. Prove it." Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or desire. And then his mouth was on hers again, harder this time, less controlled. Elena's back hit the window, the glass cold against her shoulders, and she didn't care. All she cared about was the way Adrian's hands felt on her waist, the way he kissed like he was claiming something, the way her body responded like it had been waiting for this. When they broke apart again, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he said. "I know. There's no going back. I don't want to go back." He pulled away just enough to look at her. "Then tomorrow, we make it official. You're mine. I'm yours. And anyone who has a problem with that will deal with me." Elena nodded, her heart pounding, knowing she'd just stepped off a cliff and hoping Adrian would catch her before she hit the ground. Across town, Caleb sat in darkness, scrolling through Elena's social media for the 100th time. Pictures from before they'd met, pictures from when they were together, pictures from after, when she'd blocked him from everything and disappeared into a life that didn't include him. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Stop looking for her. This is your only warning." Caleb stared at the message, rage building. Veil. "Had to be." He typed back, "She's mine. You're making a mistake." The response came immediately. "No, you are. Back off, or I'll make you." Caleb threw his phone across the room, watching it shatter against the wall. They thought they could threaten him, thought they could take what was his and get away with it. They were wrong, and he was going to prove it. The morning after felt different. Elena woke in her own apartment, in her own bed, but the weight of last night's decisions pressed against her chest like something physical. She'd crossed a line, multiple lines, and there was no pretending otherwise. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Jessica and a single text from Adrian. "Lunch, noon, I'm sending a car." Still not asking. But Elena found she didn't mind. She texted back, "I have to work. Take a long lunch. This is important." Elena stared at the message, then got up and started getting ready. Whatever was coming, she needed to face it head on. The conservation lab felt different too. Or maybe she was different, and the lab was just the same as it always was. Jessica looked up when Elena arrived, her expression somewhere between concern and resignation. "You look like you didn't sleep," Jessica said. "I slept fine." "Liar," Jessica set down her tools. "What's going on with you?" Elena wanted to tell her. Wanted to explain that she'd found someone who made her feel safe for the first time in months, that the price of that safety was stepping into a world she didn't understand, that she'd kissed him and meant it, and now everything was different, but the words wouldn't come. "I'm handling it," Elena said instead. "That's what you said last week, and the week before." Jessica moved closer, her voice dropping. "Elena, I've worked with you for 3 years. I've watched you rebuild yourself after that bastard. And now I'm watching you fall into something else, and I'm worried you're trading one kind of danger for another. It's not the same, isn't it? You're letting some man take control of your life. He's not controlling me, he's protecting me. And what's the difference?" Elena didn't have an answer for that, because maybe there wasn't one. Maybe protection and control were just 2 sides of the same coin, and she was choosing which side to bet on. "I need to get back to work," Elena said quietly. Jessica studied her for another moment, then nodded. "Your choice. Just remember you have choices." But as Elena returned to her workstation, to the half-restored painting waiting for her careful hands, she wondered if that was true. If choices made under duress were really choices at all, or just different kinds of surrender. Adrian sat across from Garrett in a coffee shop 3 blocks from his office, the kind of place where conversations got lost in the noise of espresso machines and indie music. "We have a problem," Garrett said, sliding a tablet across the table. Adrian looked at the screen. Surveillance photos. Caleb Bennett outside Elena's apartment building, outside the Art Institute, outside a coffee shop Elena frequented, all taken within the last 48 hours. "He's following her," Adrian said. "Yeah, and he's not being subtle about it, like he wants her to know." Adrian's jaw tightened. This was escalation, deliberate, calculated escalation designed to make Elena feel hunted. "Have we put people on her?" "2 rotating shifts. She hasn't noticed them, but Bennett has. Hasn't stopped him. Because he's not rational." Adrian handed back the tablet. "What else?" "Bennett's family. Father's a real estate developer, mother's on 3 charity boards. Old money, connected money. They've already made some calls asking about you, fishing for information." "Let them fish. Boss, if they start digging too deep, they won't find anything I don't want them to find." Adrian's voice was calm, but it confirms what I already knew. Bennett's not working alone anymore. He's got resources backing him. "So what's the play?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, thinking through angles. "We go public, today. Make it clear that Elena's under my protection. Make it loud enough that Bennett's family hears it and understands what that means. And if they don't care, then we make them care." Garrett nodded slowly. "You're sure about this? Once we make it public, there's no walking it back. People will talk. They'll ask questions. Let them talk." "And the girl? She ready for this?" Adrian thought about Elena in his penthouse, chin up, refusing to run. "She's stronger than you think." "That's not what I asked." "It's the answer you're getting." Garrett stood. "All right. I'll make the arrangements, but boss, be careful. You're getting attached, and attached makes you vulnerable." "I know what I'm doing." "Yeah," Garrett said. "That's what worries me." Elena met Adrian at a restaurant she'd never been to, the kind of place where reservations took weeks and the menu didn't have prices. She felt underdressed in her work clothes, but Adrian's expression when she arrived made her forget about everything else. "You look beautiful," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "I look like I came from work." "Same thing." They sat, and a waiter appeared immediately with water and wine. Elena took a sip, needing something to do with her hands. "You said this was important," she said. "It is." Adrian leaned back, his gaze steady on hers. "Caleb's been following you." Elena's stomach dropped. "What?" "For 2 days. My people have been tracking him. He's not hiding it well." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I'm telling you now. And because we're going to handle it." Elena set down her wine glass before her shaking hands could spill it. "How?" "There's a charity gala tomorrow night. The Sinclair Foundation. It's one of the biggest events of the season. Politicians, business leaders, old money. Everyone who matters in Chicago will be there." "Okay. I want you to go with me." Elena stared at him. "To a gala?" "Yes." "As what? Your date?" "As mine." His voice was firm. "We make an appearance together. Let everyone see that you're with me, that you're under my protection. It sends a message to Caleb and his family that touching you means dealing with me." "Adrian, I don't... This is too much, too fast." "It's necessary." "For who? You or me?" The question hung between them, sharp and honest. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Both," he said finally. "You need protection. I can provide it, but only if people know you're not alone." "And what do I have to do? Smile and play the part?" "You have to be yourself, that's all." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Myself, the woman who's so scared of her ex that she's hiding behind a man she barely knows." "You're not hiding. You're choosing to fight back." "By going to a party?" "By refusing to let him control your life." Adrian leaned forward. "Elena, he wants you scared, wants you isolated. Every time you change your routine, avoid places you used to go, look over your shoulder. He wins. This is how we make him lose." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say that going to a gala felt performative and empty, but the truth was, she was tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of letting Caleb dictate where she could go and who she could see. "What if I mess this up?" she asked quietly. "You won't. You don't know that. I know you." Adrian's hand covered hers on the table, warm and steady. "I've seen you handle fear. You don't break. You bend, and then you stand back up. That's all you need to do tomorrow night." Elena looked at their joined hands, at the contrast between her paint-stained fingers and his clean, controlled grip. "What happens after?" "After the gala. We see how Caleb responds. If he's smart, he backs off. If he's not, then what? Then we make it clear what happens to people who don't listen." There was something in his tone that made Elena's skin prickle. Not fear, something else. The awareness that she was sitting across from a man who could be gentle and ruthless in equal measure, and that both sides were real. "Okay," she said. "I'll go." Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Good. They ate lunch, conversation shifting to safer topics. Her work at the Institute, his frustration with city bureaucracy, the weird coffee shop that had opened down the street from her apartment. Normal things. Human things. But underneath it all, Elena felt the current of something larger pulling them forward. When Adrian walked her back to the car he'd sent, he paused on the sidewalk. "I'll have something sent to your apartment," he said, "for tomorrow night." "Something?" "A dress, shoes, whatever you need." Elena's first instinct was to refuse. She didn't need him buying her clothes. But then she thought about her closet, practical work clothes and casual weekend wear, nothing that belonged at a Chicago society gala. "Thank you," she said instead. Adrian nodded. Then, surprising her, he leaned in and kissed her forehead. It was brief, almost chaste, but it sent warmth flooding through her chest. "See you tomorrow," he said. Elena got in the car and watched him disappear back into the restaurant and wondered what version of herself she'd be tomorrow night. The dress arrived at 6 p.m., delivered by a woman who introduced herself as Margot and who had the brisk efficiency of someone who dressed important people for a living. "Mr. Vale asked me to bring options," Margot said, wheeling in a rack of gowns that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. "But I think this one will work best." She pulled out a deep blue silk dress, simple but elegant, with clean lines and a neckline that was striking without being revealing. Elena touched the fabric and felt something shift in her chest. "It's beautiful," she said. "Try it on." Elena did, and when she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back, poised, confident. Someone who belonged in Adrian's world. Margot nodded approvingly. "Perfect. Now shoes." By the time Margot left, Elena had a complete outfit, professionally styled hair, thanks to a stylist Margot had brought along, and a growing sense of unreality. This wasn't her life. She restored paintings and lived in a walk-up apartment and ate ramen for dinner half the week. But tomorrow night, she'd be someone else. Someone who went to galas with powerful men and pretended she belonged. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Saw you getting deliveries. New boyfriend buying you things already? You move fast." "Caleb." Elena's hands shook as she typed back, "Leave me alone." The response was immediate. "Or what? You'll have your attack dog come after me?" "I'm not afraid of him. You should be. We'll see. Enjoy your party. I'll be watching." Elena blocked the number, but the damage was done. He knew about the gala, knew she'd be there with Adrian, and he was already planning something. She called Adrian. "He texted me," she said when he answered. "What did he say?" Elena read him the messages, her voice shaking slightly. Adrian was quiet for a moment. "He's trying to scare you," he said finally. "Don't let him. He said he'll be watching. He won't get near you, I promise." "Adrian, what if—" "Elena." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "I've handled men worse than Caleb Bennett. You're safe. Tomorrow night, you're going to walk into that gala on my arm, and everyone there is going to see that you're not alone, that you're protected, and Caleb is going to see it too, and he's going to understand that his games are over." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that showing up to a party would somehow fix everything. But fear had its own logic, and hers was screaming that this was a mistake. "Okay," she said anyway. "Get some sleep. I'll pick you up at 7. He hung up, and Elena was alone with her fear and a designer dress, and the creeping certainty that tomorrow night was going to change everything. Across town, Caleb sat in his condo, staring at his computer screen. He'd spent the last 3 hours digging deeper into Adrian Vale, bypassing the sanitized public information and finding the things people tried to hide. Vale wasn't just a businessman. He was a fixer. The kind of man who made problems disappear, who knew where bodies were buried because he'd helped bury them. Connections to union leaders, politicians, developers, money flowing through shell companies and offshore accounts. Nothing illegal enough to prosecute, but dirty enough to matter. Caleb smiled, because dirty meant leverage, and leverage meant power. He made a call to someone who owed him a favor. I need information. Everything you can find on Adrian Vale's business dealings, contracts, partnerships, anything that might be questionable. That's a tall order. I'll make it worth your while. When do you need it? Yesterday. The person on the other end sighed. I'll see what I can do. Caleb hung up and pulled up the Sinclair Foundation Gala invitation he'd received weeks ago. He hadn't planned on going. Charity events bored him. But now it was the perfect opportunity. Elena would be there, with Vale. And Caleb was going to make sure they both understood that he wasn't going anywhere. The next evening came too fast. Elena stood in her bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror, trying to recognize the woman looking back. The dress fit perfectly. Her hair fell in soft waves. The makeup Margot had applied made her look polished and confident, but inside she was terrified. A knock at the door. Elena took a breath and opened it. Adrian stood in the hallway in a tailored black tuxedo, and the sight of him made her forget how to breathe. He looked dangerous and elegant in equal measure, like violence wrapped in silk. "You're stunning," he said. "You're not so bad yourself." He smiled, just slightly, and offered his arm. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Neither am I." The honesty surprised her. "Really? These things are theater. I hate theater." He guided her toward the stairs. "But necessary theater." The car waiting outside was sleek and black, and when Garrett opened the door for them, Elena caught his expression, something between approval and concern. The drive to the gala was quiet. Elena watched the city slide past, her hand resting on the seat between them. Halfway there, Adrian's hand covered hers, and she looked over at him. "Whatever happens tonight," he said quietly, "stay close to me." "You think something will happen?" "I think Caleb's unpredictable. And unpredictable is dangerous." The Sinclair Foundation Gala was held at one of Chicago's grand hotels, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers. Photographers lined the entrance, cameras flashing as guests arrived. Elena's stomach churned. "I'm not used to this," she said. "Just smile. Let them take their pictures. Then we go inside and you never have to think about them again." They stepped out of the car, and immediately the cameras turned toward them. Elena felt Adrian's hand settle at the small of her back, steadying her, and she lifted her chin and smiled the way Margot had taught her. Flash, flash, flash. Questions shouted from the photographers. "Mr. Vale, who's your date?" "Miss, what's your name?" "Are you two together?" Adrian didn't answer any of them. He just guided Elena through the gauntlet and into the hotel, where the noise dropped away and the real performance began. The ballroom was massive, filled with Chicago's elite. Women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos, champagne flowing like water. Elena recognized a few faces from the news. A congressman, a tech CEO, a philanthropist whose family name was on half the buildings downtown. "This is your world," she said quietly. "No," Adrian replied. "This is where my world and theirs intersect. There's a difference." A waiter appeared with champagne. Adrian took 2 glasses and handed one to Elena. "To not breaking," he said. Elena clinked her glass against his. "To bending, instead." They drank, and then Adrian led her into the room, and Elena felt every eye turn toward them, assessing, judging, wondering. "They're staring," she murmured. "Let them." A woman approached, mid-50s, dripping in diamonds. "Adrian, how lovely to see you." "Catherine." Adrian's tone was polite but cool. "This is Elena Brooks." "Elena? Catherine Sinclair, tonight's hostess." Catherine's eyes swept over Elena with the precision of someone who could calculate net worth and social standing in seconds. "Charming. What do you do, dear?" "I'm an art conservator at the Institute." "How practical." Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Adrian, we must talk about the Riverside development. I've heard concerns." Not tonight. It's important. It can wait. Adrian's hand tightened slightly on Elena's back. If you'll excuse us. He guided Elena away before Catherine could protest. She hates me, Elena said. She hates everyone. Don't take it personally. They circulated through the room, Adrian introducing her to a steady stream of people whose names Elena immediately forgot. A judge, a developer, a woman who owned half the restaurants in the city. Each conversation was brief, performative, and left Elena feeling more out of place. You're doing fine, Adrian said quietly during a rare moment alone. I feel like a fraud. You're not. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. Before Elena could respond, she saw him, Caleb, standing near the bar, watching them with an expression that made her blood run cold. He's here, she whispered. Adrian followed her gaze, and his expression didn't change. But something in his posture shifted, became more alert, more dangerous. Stay close to me, he said again. Caleb started moving toward them, and Elena's heart hammered. Adrian shifted slightly, positioning himself between her and Caleb, and when Caleb reached them, his smile was all teeth. Elena, what a surprise. Caleb, her voice came out steadier than she felt. You need to leave. It's a public event. I have as much right to be here as you. You have no right to be anywhere near her, Adrian said, his voice low and deadly calm. Caleb's gaze shifted to Adrian, and something ugly flickered in his expression. And you are? The person telling you to walk away. Or what? You'll have me thrown out? This isn't some dive bar, Vale. These are my people, my world. You think showing up here with my girlfriend makes you important? Ex-girlfriend, Elena said firmly. We're done, Caleb. We've been done. We're done when I say we're done. Adrian moved, subtle but deliberate, putting himself fully between Caleb and Elena. Last warning, leave, now. People were starting to notice, conversations quieting, eyes turning toward them. Caleb seemed to realize it too, and his smile widened. This isn't over, he said. Then louder, for the benefit of anyone listening, enjoy the party, Elena. I'll see you soon. He walked away and Elena realized she was shaking. Adrian's hand found hers, warm and steady. Breathe. He threatened me, in front of everyone. I know, and everyone saw. Adrian's gaze swept the room, which means they'll also see what happens next. What happens next? But before Adrian could answer, a man Elena didn't recognize approached. Mid-60s, expensive suit, the kind of presence that suggested real power. Adrian, the man said, we need to talk. Not now, Richard. Yes, now. Richard's gaze flicked to Elena, then back to Adrian. It's about the Bennett situation, and it's urgent. Adrian's jaw tightened. He looked at Elena. Will you be all right for a few minutes? I'll be fine. Garrett's near the east entrance. If you need anything, I'll find him. Go. Adrian hesitated, then nodded and walked away with Richard, leaving Elena alone in a room full of strangers and the lingering echo of Caleb's threat. She moved toward the edge of the ballroom, needing air, needing space, found a balcony overlooking the city and stepped out into the cold night. Chicago spread beneath her, lights and shadows and the dark ribbon of the lake. She gripped the railing, trying to calm her racing heart. You look lost. Elena turned. A woman stood in the doorway, early 30s, red dress, expression that was more curious than hostile. Just needed air, Elena said. I don't blame you. These things are suffocating. The woman stepped onto the balcony, extending her hand. Sophia Reyes. Elena shook it. Elena Brooks. I know. You're with Adrian Vale. I am. Sophia leaned against the railing beside her. Word of advice? Be careful. Adrian's world is complicated. I'm getting that impression. I'm serious. He's not a bad man, but he's not a safe one either. And the people who orbit him, they have agendas. Caleb Bennett included. Elena's stomach tightened. You know Caleb? Everyone knows the Bennetts. Old money, old connections. And Caleb's the worst of them. Entitled, obsessive, and backed by a family that's used to getting what they want. What do they want? Sophia looked at her for a long moment. That's the question, isn't it? Because this isn't just about you. It's about Adrian. And whatever game Caleb's playing, you're the piece he's using. Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Where are you? Balcony. East side. Stay there. I'm coming. Sophia straightened. That's my cue to disappear. Take care of yourself, Elena. And remember, no one's the hero in these stories. Sometimes you just have to survive. She left, and Elena was alone again with the city and the cold and the growing certainty that she'd walked into something far more dangerous than she'd understood. Adrian appeared moments later, his expression tight. We need to leave, he said. What? Why? Because Caleb's family just made a move, and staying here becomes a liability. What kind of move? The kind we deal with somewhere private. He took her hand. Come on. They left through a side entrance, Garrett materializing from nowhere to escort them to the car. As they pulled away from the hotel, Elena looked back at the glittering facade and wondered if this was what choosing felt like, or if she'd just traded one cage for another. The car cut through Chicago's streets with purpose, the city lights blurring past Elena's window. Adrian sat beside her, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and clipped as he spoke to someone whose responses she couldn't hear. Garrett drove in silence, his eyes constantly checking mirrors, scanning the streets like he expected trouble to materialize at any moment. Elena's hands were folded in her lap, fingers twisted together so tight her knuckles had gone white. The blue dress that had made her feel elegant an hour ago now felt like a costume she couldn't wait to shed. Understood, Adrian said into the phone. Keep me updated. He hung up and looked at Elena. You okay? You keep asking me that. Because you keep not answering. Elena turned to face him. What move did Caleb's family make? Adrian was quiet for a moment, weighing his words. They filed a complaint with the Liquor Commission. 3 of my clubs are under investigation for violations that don't exist. It's harassment wrapped in bureaucracy. Because of me. Because they're trying to pressure me into backing off. Which is the same thing. Elena's voice cracked slightly. I'm destroying your business. No, they're attempting to use your situation as leverage. There's a difference. Adrian's hand found hers, untangling her fingers and holding them steady. This is what they do, Elena. They push, they test, they find weak spots and exploit them. But I've been playing this game longer than Caleb's been alive. It doesn't feel like a game. It's not. I'm just using language you'll understand. The car turned down a side street and Adrian nodded toward a building ahead. We're going to my office. It's secure. We can talk there. The office was the converted loft Elena vaguely remembered from their first real conversation. All exposed brick and industrial fixtures, art on the walls worth more than most people's houses. Garrett did a sweep of the space before nodding to Adrian and positioning himself near the entrance. Adrian poured them both scotch, without asking, neat, and handed Elena a glass. She took it, but didn't drink, just held it and felt the weight of the crystal against her palm. Tell me everything, she said. Adrian moved to the window, looking out at the city the way he always did when he was thinking. Richard Holbrook pulled me aside tonight. He's a lawyer, handles sensitive situations for people who can afford discretion. The Bennetts hired him. To do what? To deliver a message. They know about us, about you being under my protection, and they're willing to make my life complicated if I don't step back. Elena's stomach churned. So step back. Adrian turned, his expression sharp. What? Step back. Let me handle Caleb on my own. I'm not worth losing. Your business is over. That's not your decision to make. It's my life. And I'm in it now. You don't get to push me out because things got difficult. Elena set down her glass before she dropped it. This isn't difficult, Adrian. This is insane. I asked you to dance. One dance. And now you're being investigated by the city and threatened by lawyers. And I can't be the reason you lose everything you've built. Adrian crossed the space between them in 3 strides, his hands settling on her shoulders, firm but not harsh. Listen to me. I've been threatened before, by people scarier and smarter than the Bennetts. This isn't new. What's new is having someone worth protecting. I didn't ask for this. Yes, you did. When you stayed, when you came to dinner, when you went to that gala tonight and walked in on my arm in front of everyone who matters in this city. His voice softened slightly. You asked for this, and I'm giving it to you. Don't second-guess it now. Elena's eyes burned. What if I can't handle it? Then we handle it together. The words hung between them, simple and impossible. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that together was enough. But she'd believed before, believed Caleb when he said he'd change, believed her own strength when she left him, and both times she'd been wrong. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." "That's not comforting. It's honest." Adrian's hand slid down to take hers. "I'm not going to lie to you, Elena. This is complicated. Caleb's family has resources and they're willing to use them, but so do I. And I'm better at this than they are." "At what?" "At knowing which pressures to apply and when. At understanding that power isn't just about money, it's about information, timing, and being willing to do what others won't." He paused. "They think filing complaints and making calls to city officials will make me back down. They're wrong." "What are you going to do?" "What I'm good at, apply pressure of my own." He released her hands and moved to his desk, pulling up files on his computer. The Bennetts have their own vulnerabilities. Real estate deals that skirted regulations, campaign contributions that crossed ethical lines. Caleb's sealed court records. I've had people digging since the night we met. Elena felt cold. "You've been investigating them this whole time?" "Of course I have. You think I'd take this on blind?" "I think I didn't realize what taking this on meant for you." Adrian looked at her, and something in his expression was almost sad. "This is who I am, Elena. I told you that. I find leverage, I use it. It's not clean, and it's not noble, but it works." "And Caleb? What happens to him?" "That depends on how smart he is. If he backs off, nothing. If he escalates..." Adrian trailed off, but the implication was clear. Elena moved to the window, needing distance, needing air. The city sprawled beneath them, oblivious to the small wars being fought in penthouses and offices, and the spaces between right and wrong. "I used to think the world had rules," she said quietly, "that if you followed them, you'd be safe. And now? Now I think the rules only apply if you don't have enough power to ignore them." Adrian joined her at the window. "That's not entirely wrong. It's depressing. It's realistic." He was quiet for a moment. "You can still walk away. I meant what I said before. I'll protect you either way. But if you stay, if we do this together, you need to understand that the world we're in doesn't play fair." Elena turned to look at him. "And if I stay? What does that make me?" "Someone who's tired of being a victim." The word landed like a punch. Because he was right. She was tired. Tired of fear, tired of looking over her shoulder, tired of letting Caleb dictate the shape of her life. "Okay," she said. "Okay? I'm staying. Whatever happens, we handle it together." She took a breath. "But I need you to promise me something." "What?" "That you won't lie to me. Not about this. Not about what we're doing or what it costs." Her voice was steady now, firm. "I can handle ugly. I can't handle being kept in the dark." Adrian studied her for a long moment, and Elena saw respect flicker in his expression. "Deal. No lies. Even when the truth is bad?" "Especially then." Elena nodded, feeling something settle in her chest. Not peace, but certainty. She'd made her choice, and now she had to live with it. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his jaw tightened. "We have another problem." "What now?" "Caleb just posted something to social media." He turned the phone so Elena could see. It was a photo of her and Adrian at the gala, clearly taken by Caleb himself. The caption read, "Interesting to see how fast some people move on. Guess loyalty means nothing anymore. But don't worry, I'm patient." Comments were already flooding in. Some supportive of Caleb, others calling him creepy. A few tagging news outlets, turning their private drama into public spectacle. "He's trying to control the narrative," Adrian said. "Make himself look like the victim." "It's working. Look at the comments." "Comments don't matter. Facts do." Adrian was already typing on his phone. "I'm having someone leak the restraining order attempts. The sealed cases from his exes. By morning, everyone who sees that post will also see what kind of man he really is." Elena felt sick. This is turning into a war. It was always a war. Now it's just out in the open. Garrett appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we've got movement on Bennett. He left the gala 10 minutes after you did. My guys lost him near Wicker Park." Adrian's expression went cold. "Near Elena's apartment?" "Yeah." Elena's blood turned to ice. "He knows where I live." "He's known since the beginning," Adrian said. "But now he's making a point of being there, reminding you that he can get close whenever he wants. He looked at Garrett. Send 2 more people. I want eyes on that building 24/7. Already done. Good. Adrian turned back to Elena. You're not going home tonight. Adrian, not negotiable. You stay here or you come to my place. Your choice. But you're not going back to that apartment until we know what he's planning. Part of Elena wanted to argue, to insist she could handle herself, that she wouldn't be driven from her own home. But the larger part, the part that remembered Caleb's eyes at the gala, the cold promise in them, knew Adrian was right. Here, she said, I'll stay here. I'll have clothes and whatever else you need sent over. He nodded to Garrett, who disappeared to make arrangements. Elena sank onto the leather sofa, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the evening was draining away, leaving only fatigue and the weight of too many decisions made too quickly. Adrian sat beside her, close but not touching. You're going to be okay. You keep saying that. Because it's true. How do you know? Because I won't let it be anything else. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to let his certainty become hers, but trust was a muscle she'd let atrophy, and rebuilding it hurt. She leaned against him, just slightly, and felt his arm come around her shoulders. They sat like that in silence, watching the city lights, while somewhere out there Caleb plotted his next move, and the Bennetts made their calls, and the machinery of power ground forward with or without their permission. The night stretched long. Garrett brought food neither of them touched and updates every hour. Caleb had returned to his condo. The Bennett's lawyer had made 3 more calls to city officials. Social media was still buzzing about the photo. Elena dozed fitfully on the sofa, waking every time her phone buzzed with another notification, another comment, another reminder that her private pain was now public entertainment. Around 3 a.m., Adrian's phone rang. He answered it immediately, his voice sharp. Talk to me. Elena couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Adrian's expression change. Surprise, then calculation, then something that looked almost like satisfaction. You're sure? Adrian asked. A pause. Get me copies. Everything. I want it verified by morning. He hung up and looked at Elena. We just got lucky. How? One of Caleb's exes, the one from Milwaukee, she reached out to my people, said she saw the social media post and wanted to talk. Elena sat up straighter. About what? About what Caleb did to her, and about the settlement his family paid her to keep quiet. Adrian's expression was grim. Apparently she's tired of being quiet. What did he do? Put her in the hospital. Claimed it was an accident, that she fell. But the medical records tell a different story. His family paid her $50,000 and made the police report disappear. Elena felt sick. He hurt her. He did more than hurt her. He put her in ICU for 3 days, fractured ribs, concussion, internal bruising. Adrian's voice was controlled, but Elena could hear the anger underneath. And his family covered it up, made it go away like it never happened. Why is she coming forward now? Because she saw what he was doing to you, saw the pattern repeating, and she decided she didn't want to carry that guilt anymore. Elena's hands were shaking. All this time, she'd known Caleb was dangerous, but this was proof that her fear wasn't irrational, that the threat was real and had a history written in someone else's blood. What do we do with this? She asked. We use it. Not publicly, not yet, but we make sure the Bennetts know we have it. Make sure they understand that if this goes any further, their son's past becomes very public. That's blackmail. That's leverage. Adrian's gaze was steady. You said you wanted the truth, even when it's ugly. This is ugly. But it's also what keeps you safe. Elena stood, needing to move, to process. She paced the length of the office, her mind racing. If we do this, if we use this information, we're no better than them. We're not trying to be better. We're trying to win. And the difference is? Better is a luxury. Winning is survival. Adrian stood too, crossing to her. I know this isn't what you want to hear. I know it doesn't fit the version of justice you grew up believing in. But this is the world we're in. And in this world, the only thing that matters is being willing to do what the other side won't. Elena stopped pacing and looked at him. What happened to you to make you think like this? Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Nothing happened. I just stopped pretending the world was fair and started accepting it for what it is. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight. They stared at each other, the space between them charged with frustration and exhaustion and something else Elena couldn't name. Finally, she broke eye contact. I need to sleep, she said. Or try to, anyway. There's a bedroom upstairs. Garrett already put clothes and toiletries in there for you. Elena nodded and started toward the stairs, then paused. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you. For everything, even when I don't understand it. You don't have to thank me. I know. I'm doing it anyway. She climbed the stairs and found the bedroom. Simple, clean, with a view of the city that was becoming familiar. The clothes Garrett had brought were basic but comfortable, and Elena changed mechanically, her body going through motions while her mind spun. She lay down on the bed but didn't sleep. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and thought about the woman in Milwaukee who'd carried Caleb's violence as a secret for years. Thought about the sealed court records and disappeared police reports. Thought about how many other women there might be, how many other stories buried under money and lawyers, and the institutional willingness to look the other way. Her phone buzzed. Another text from a blocked number. You think you're safe with him? You're not. Nobody is. Elena stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. Let Caleb send his threats into the void. She was done being afraid. She must have dozed eventually, because when she opened her eyes again, gray dawn light was seeping through the windows and her phone showed a dozen new notifications. Most were social media noise, but one was a text from Adrian. Come downstairs when you're ready. We need to talk. Elena got up, washed her face, and made her way back to the main office. Adrian was at his desk, Garrett standing beside him, both men looking at a laptop screen with expressions that made Elena's stomach knot. What is it? She asked. Adrian looked up. The Milwaukee woman. Her name is Rachel Chen. She didn't just reach out. She went to a reporter. Her story's going live in 2 hours. Elena's heart stuttered. What? She gave them everything. Medical records, settlement agreement, photos from the hospital. It's going to blow the Bennett's cover-up wide open. I thought we were going to use that as leverage. We were. But Rachel decided she was done being silent. Adrian's expression was complicated, respect mixed with concern, which changes the playing field significantly. How? Garrett answered. Because once that story hits, the Bennetts are going to go into damage control mode, which means they'll either pull back entirely or double down on trying to discredit Rachel and anyone associated with her story. Including me, Elena said quietly. Including you, Adrian confirmed. They'll dig into your past, your relationship with Caleb, looking for anything they can use to paint you as unreliable or vindictive. Elena's laugh was bitter. Good luck. I've been documenting everything since the day I left him. Smart, Adrian stood. But we still need to be ready. Once that article drops, this stops being a private situation and becomes public spectacle. Are you prepared for that? Elena thought about it. About strangers reading her story, dissecting her choices, arguing in comment sections about whether she deserved sympathy or suspicion, about becoming a name in a news cycle, reduced to victim or liar depending on who was telling the story. No, she said honestly, but I don't think anyone ever is. Fair answer. Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his jaw tightened. It's Richard Holbrook, the Bennett's lawyer. Answer it, Elena said. Let's hear what they have to say. Adrian put the phone on speaker. Richard? Adrian, we need to meet, immediately. Why? Because in about 90 minutes, my clients are going to have a very public problem, and I think it's in everyone's best interest if we discuss terms before that happens. Terms for what? For making this situation go away, quietly, before it destroys multiple lives. Adrian's expression was cold. You mean before it destroys your client's reputation? Among other things. Richard's voice was smooth, practiced. My clients are prepared to offer Miss Brooks a significant settlement in exchange for her cooperation in minimizing the fallout from Miss Chen's unfortunate decision to break her NDA. Elena's hands curled into fists. I'm not taking their money. Miss Brooks, Richard said, clearly having heard her. I understand you're upset, but please consider the practical realities. This is going to become very ugly very quickly. My clients can make that process easier for you, or harder. Your choice. Tell your clients, Elena said, her voice shaking with anger, that they can take their settlement and choke on it. I'm not covering for what Caleb did. Not to Rachel, not to anyone. There was a pause. Then Richard sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. Adrian, can we speak privately? No, whatever you have to say it now. Very well. My clients want you to know that if you continue to involve yourself in this situation, they will make every aspect of your business operations their personal crusade. The Liquor Commission complaints are just the beginning. They have connections in zoning, licensing, city contracts. They will bury you in bureaucracy until you have nothing left to protect Miss Brooks with. Is that a threat? It's a prediction based on my client's resources and determination. Adrian leaned forward, his voice deadly quiet. Tell your clients that I've been threatened by people with actual power. They're not impressive, and if they want to start a war over this, I'm happy to show them exactly how outmatched they are. Adrian, we're done here, Richard. Tell the Bennetts to prepare for the storm, because it's coming, and they brought it on themselves. He hung up. The silence that followed was heavy. Garrett spoke first. They're going to come at us with everything they have. Let them. Adrian's expression was calm, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders. They think power is about money and connections. They're about to learn it's about being willing to lose everything for the right fight. Elena stared at him. Are you? Willing to lose everything? Adrian met her eyes. For this? Yes. Why? Because some fights matter more than winning. The words settled over the room like a benediction, and Elena felt something shift inside her. Not certainty, not confidence, but the beginning of understanding that maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who saw fighting for her as worth the cost. The article went live at 8 a.m. Elena watched it spread across social media in real time, each share and retweet amplifying Rachel Chen's story. Photos of her bruised face in the hospital, copies of the settlement agreement, a statement from the hospital confirming the extent of her injuries. And in the middle of it all, Caleb Bennett's name over and over, attached to words like assault and cover-up and pattern of abuse. Within an hour, news outlets were picking it up. By noon, it was trending nationally. By 2 p.m., the Bennetts had released a statement calling Rachel's accusations false and defamatory and promising legal action against anyone who repeated them. But the damage was done. The cracks in their carefully constructed facade were showing, and Elena could see the machinery of public opinion beginning to turn against them. Her phone rang. Jessica from the Institute. Elena? What the hell is going on? It's complicated. No kidding. Your name is in 3 different articles about some Bennett family scandal. People are saying your ex put someone in the hospital. He did, and he probably would have done the same to me eventually. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Are you safe? I am now. Where are you? Somewhere safe. I can't really explain more than that. Elena, this is insane. You need to come back to normal life before you get swallowed by whatever this is. What if normal life is what got me here in the first place? Elena's voice was quiet. What if playing by the rules and staying small and hoping things would get better is exactly why Caleb thought he could get away with treating me like property? So your solution is to what? Let some power broker fight your battles? My solution is to stop fighting alone. Jessica sighed. Just be careful, please. I've seen what happens when people get caught up in things bigger than themselves. It doesn't usually end well. I know, but staying where I was didn't end well either. They hung up, and Elena sat with her phone in her hands, watching her old life and new life collide in news feeds and comment sections, and the steady accumulation of consequences neither she nor Caleb could control anymore. Adrian appeared with coffee, setting it beside her. How are you holding up? I don't know. Ask me when this is over. It might not be over for a while. I know. Elena looked up at him. The Bennetts aren't going to just accept this, are they? No, they're going to fight back. Hard. How? However they can. Discredit Rachel. Discredit you. Try to flip the narrative. Adrian sat beside her. But they're playing defense now, and defense is always weaker than offense. That doesn't make me feel better. It should, because it means we're winning. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that exposure and truth would be enough. But she'd learned that truth was only as powerful as people's willingness to believe it, and belief was a fickle thing. Her phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. Another message. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Elena showed it to Adrian without comment. He read it, and his expression went hard. That's it, he said. We're done playing nice. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the beginning. End this. Adrian made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, each one brief and surgical. Elena watched from across the room, trying to read his expression as he spoke in clipped sentences about documentation and timing and legal exposure. When he finished, he set down the phone and looked at her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "What did you just do?" she asked. "Set things in motion." He crossed to his desk and pulled up files on his laptop. "The Bennetts think this is about protecting their son. It's not. It's about protecting their money and reputation, so we hit them where it actually hurts." How? Their real estate portfolio. Turns out several of their flagship developments involved zoning variances that were approved under questionable circumstances. Campaign contributions to city council members. Suspiciously timed inspections that overlooked code violations. Nothing provably illegal, but ugly enough to trigger investigations. Elena felt cold. "You're going after their business. I'm making them choose. Keep coming after you, and every regulatory body in Illinois starts asking uncomfortable questions, or walk away, and we all move on with our lives. That's extortion. That's incentive." Adrian's voice was firm, but not unkind. "Elena, they already declared war. I'm just making sure they understand the cost of continuing it. And if they don't care, if they decide their pride is worth more than their business, then they're stupider than I thought." He closed the laptop. "But I don't think they are. The Bennetts built their empire over 3 generations. They're not going to burn it down for Caleb's obsession." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that leverage and strategy would be enough. But she'd seen Caleb's eyes at the gala, the cold certainty in them. He didn't think like a businessman calculating risk. He thought like someone who'd never been told no. "What about Caleb himself?" she asked. "Even if his family backs off, he might not." "I know." Adrian's expression darkened. "Which is why we have a different plan for him." "What plan?" Before Adrian could answer, Garrett appeared in the doorway. "We've got movement. Caleb just left his condo. He's heading toward the Art Institute." Elena's blood went cold. "My work." "He can't get to you there," Adrian said immediately. "The building has security. Jessica's there, my coworkers. If he's angry enough, if he wants to make a scene," Elena was already moving toward the door. "I need to go." "Not alone, you don't." Adrian grabbed his jacket. "Garrett, bring the car around." They made it to the Art Institute in 15 minutes that felt like hours. Elena's hands were clenched in her lap, her mind racing through scenarios. Caleb confronting Jessica. Caleb making a scene in the conservation lab. Caleb doing something that would force Elena's private nightmare into her professional life. The car pulled up to the employee entrance, and Elena was out before it fully stopped. Adrian was right behind her, his hand at her back as they moved through security and up the stairs to the conservation wing. The lab was quiet. Too quiet. Elena's heart hammered as she pushed open the door. Jessica was at her workstation, alone, carefully cleaning a painting. She looked up when Elena entered, surprise flashing across her face. "Elena? What are you? Where is everyone?" "Conference. Annual review meeting. I stayed behind to finish this piece." Jessica set down her tools. "What's wrong?" "Caleb, we thought he was coming here." "He was." Jessica's expression hardened. "Showed up about 20 minutes ago. Security wouldn't let him past the lobby. He made a scene, threatened to call his family's lawyers, the whole performance. They escorted him out." Elena's legs felt weak. She sank onto a stool. "Did he say what he wanted?" "You. He kept saying he needed to talk to you, that it was urgent, that you were making a mistake." Jessica looked past Elena to Adrian, who'd remained near the door. "I'm guessing that's not true." "It's not," Elena said. Jessica studied them both for a long moment. "You want to tell me what's actually going on? Because from where I'm sitting, you've got a dangerous ex who won't leave you alone and a dangerous new boyfriend who's solving the problem through intimidation, and I can't tell which one scares me more." "He's not," Elena started, then stopped. Because Jessica wasn't entirely wrong. It's complicated. Everything's complicated when you don't want to admit the simple truth. Jessica stood, crossing her arms. "You're in over your head, Elena. I don't know what kind of world this guy operates in, but it's not yours. And sooner or later, you're going to have to decide if leaving one bad situation for a different kind of bad situation was actually an improvement." The words stung because they carried weight. Elena looked at Adrian, who'd stayed silent through the exchange, his expression unreadable. "Can you give us a minute?" Elena asked Jessica. Jessica nodded and left the lab, closing the door behind her. Elena turned to Adrian. "Is she right?" "About what?" "About this being another bad situation." Adrian moved closer and Elena could see the careful thought behind his eyes. "I think she's right that this isn't your world, but I don't think she's right that it's bad for you. Different doesn't mean worse, doesn't it? I've traded Caleb's obsession for your protection, but both of them involve men making decisions about my safety without asking what I actually want." "Then tell me what you want." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I want to not be afraid. I want to go to work without wondering if my ex is going to show up. I want to sleep in my own apartment without triple-checking locks. I want my life back." "And you think being with me prevents that?" "I think being with you means my life looks different than I planned. And I don't know if I'm okay with that." Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When I met you, you were counting breaths to keep from having a panic attack while your ex circled you like prey. You weren't living your life then either. You were surviving it. That's not fair." "It's true. You can be angry at me for how I've handled this, for making decisions without asking permission, for pulling you into my world without a roadmap. But don't pretend you had some perfect life I disrupted. You were already disrupted. I just offered a different kind of solution." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to push back against the implication that she'd been helpless before he arrived. But the truth sat heavy in her chest. She had been drowning, and he'd thrown her a rope. That the rope came with strings didn't make it less effective. "So what now?" she asked. "Now you decide. Keep going with this. With me. Knowing it's messy and complicated and might not look like the life you imagined, or walk away, and I'll still make sure Caleb can't touch you, but from a distance. Those are my only options? Those are the honest ones." Elena looked around the lab, at the half-restored paintings waiting for her careful hands, at the familiar tools and controlled environment where she could fix things one delicate brushstroke at a time. Then she looked at Adrian, at this man who'd turned her life upside down and refused to apologize for it. "I'm staying," she said. "But we do this differently going forward. You don't make decisions about my safety without talking to me first. You don't pull me out of my life without explanation. We're partners in this, or we're nothing." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. "Partners. Yeah. Which means you trust me to handle information you think might scare me. Which means you let me make my own choices even when you disagree with them. And if your choices put you in danger, then you say so. And then I decide anyway." Elena stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to stop protecting me. I'm asking you to let me protect myself alongside you." Adrian studied her for a long moment, and Elena saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was used to control, used to making decisions and having them followed. What she was asking meant giving up some of that control, trusting her judgment even when his instincts screamed otherwise. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay? Partners. We do this together. Full transparency, shared decisions, even when it's harder that way." "You mean that?" "I don't say things I don't mean." Elena felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief exactly, but possibility. The sense that maybe this didn't have to be about trading one cage for another. That maybe she could have both safety and autonomy if she fought hard enough for it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me, alone. Tonight at 8, the Riverwalk near State Street. Or I start making things very public and very ugly for everyone you care about. Caleb." Elena showed the message to Adrian. His jaw tightened immediately. "No," he said. "It's not your decision." "Elena, we just agreed. Partners. Which means I get to decide if I want to meet him." "To do what? Let him threaten you in person?" "To end this." Elena's voice was firm. "He wants a confrontation. Fine. Let's have one. But on our terms, with your people watching, with everything documented. We get him on record making threats, and then we have evidence that goes beyond social media posts and blocked numbers." Adrian looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "You want to use yourself as bait. I want to take control of the situation instead of reacting to whatever he does next. That's insane. That's strategic." Elena held his gaze. "You said you'd trust me, so trust me on this." The silence stretched between them, tension crackling. Finally, Adrian pulled out his phone. Garrett, we need a team. Full surveillance setup. Riverwalk near State Street tonight at 8. He hung up and looked at Elena. You're not going in without backup, and at the first sign he's escalating beyond words, we pull you out. Agreed. And you wear a wire so we can hear everything. Fine. And afterward, we're having a very long conversation about what partners means to you, because this is not how I imagined it going. Elena almost smiled. Get used to it. The hours before 8 p.m. crawled by. Adrian's people set up surveillance, cameras disguised as streetlights, directional microphones, 3 teams positioned at different points along the Riverwalk. Garrett fitted Elena with a wire so small she could barely feel it, testing the audio quality twice before nodding his approval. Remember, Adrian said as they prepared to leave, you're in control. If at any point you want out, just say the word and we move in. I know. And Elena? He caught her hand. Be careful. Caleb's unpredictable. Don't trust anything he says. I won't. But as Elena made her way to the Riverwalk alone, Adrian and Garrett monitoring from a van 2 blocks away, she felt the old fear creeping back. The fear Caleb had cultivated over months of their relationship. The fear that her judgment was wrong. That she was making everything worse. That she deserved whatever happened because she'd somehow brought it on herself. She pushed it down. That was the old Elena. The one who counted breaths and made herself small. The one she was trying to leave behind. The Riverwalk at night was mostly empty, the cold keeping tourists and evening joggers away. Elena walked slowly toward the State Street Bridge, her hands shoved in her coat pockets, her breath visible in the autumn air. Caleb was waiting near the railing, looking out at the dark water. He turned when he heard her footsteps. You came, he said. You didn't give me much choice. There's always a choice, Elena. You just don't like your options. She stopped 10 feet away, maintaining distance. What do you want? To talk, without your guard dog listening in. Adrian's not, please. You think I don't know he's got people watching right now? That you're probably wearing a wire? Caleb's smile was cold. I'm not stupid. Elena's stomach dropped. If he knew about the surveillance, if he was prepared for it, then this whole plan. But I don't care, Caleb continued. Let them listen. I want them to hear this. He moved closer, and Elena had to fight the urge to back away. You've destroyed my life. You know that? Rachel Chen's little expose, the media circus, my family's business being investigated, all of it traces back to you. No, it traces back to you, to what you did to Rachel, to what you've been doing to me. I loved you. You controlled me. There's a difference. Caleb's expression flickered, anger, hurt, something else Elena couldn't read. I gave you everything, took care of you, and you repaid me by running to the first man who looked at you twice. You scared me, Caleb. Every day we were together, I was scared. That's not love, that's captivity. So dramatic. He laughed, and the sound made Elena's skin crawl. You always did have a flair for exaggeration. Poor little Elena, so victimized. Never mind that you could have left any time. Never mind that you stayed because you wanted to. I stayed because you made me believe I couldn't survive without you. And then when I finally left, you spent months proving that leaving didn't mean escaping. Because we're not done. Yes, we are. No. Caleb's voice hardened. We're done when I say we are. And right now, I'm saying you have a choice. Come back, publicly. End whatever this thing is with Vale. Tell the media that Rachel's accusations are overblown, that you both misunderstood my intentions. Help me fix this. Elena stared at him. You're insane. I'm offering you a way out. Of what? Of the war you started. Because if you don't take this deal, I will make your life a nightmare. I will sue you for defamation. I will go after every friend you have, every coworker, every person who's ever supported you. I will make you radioactive. You can't. I can, and I will, unless you come back. There it was. The truth beneath all the threats and manipulation. He didn't want her love. He wanted her compliance, wanted proof that he could still make her bend. No, Elena said. Caleb's expression went cold. What? No, I'm not coming back. I'm not lying for you. I'm not fixing the mess you made. Elena's voice was shaking but firm. You want to sue me? Go ahead. You want to make my life difficult? You've been doing that for months, but you don't get to threaten me into submission anymore. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. She took a step back. We're done here. Elena, we're done, Caleb. Accept it or don't. But either way, I'm walking away now. She turned and started walking back toward the lights of the city, her heart hammering, half expecting him to grab her, to escalate, to prove that she'd been right to be afraid. But he didn't. She made it 20 feet before she heard his voice again, quieter now, almost pleading. You'll regret this. Elena stopped, but didn't turn around. I already regret plenty, but leaving you isn't one of them. Then she kept walking. Adrian met her halfway, appearing from the shadows with Garrett right behind him. His hands went to her shoulders, his eyes searching her face. Are you okay? I'm fine. Elena's voice was steadier than she felt. Did you get it all? Every word, including his explicit threats. Adrian's expression was grim but satisfied. That's more than enough for a restraining order, and combined with Rachel's case, it establishes a pattern. So what now? Now we go legal. File for the restraining order with enough documentation that no judge in Illinois will deny it. Make it clear that any further contact constitutes violation. And if he's stupid enough to break it, he goes to jail, Elena finished. He goes to jail. Elena looked back toward the riverwalk where Caleb still stood by the railing, a dark figure against darker water. You think it'll be enough? It'll have to be, because if it's not, if he comes near you again. Adrian's voice went hard. Then we stop being civilized. They returned to Adrian's office, where Garrett immediately began processing the recording, pulling out the clearest sections of Caleb's threats and compiling them with the other evidence they'd gathered. Elena sat on the sofa, exhaustion finally catching up with her. You did good tonight, Adrian said, sitting beside her. I was terrified. I know. But you didn't show it, and you didn't back down. He took her hand. That takes strength. Elena leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. What happens to the Bennetts, the business stuff you were using as leverage? That depends on them. If they're smart, they'll convince Caleb to accept the restraining order and move on. If they're not, Adrian shrugged, then the regulatory investigations move forward and they deal with the consequences. You'd really destroy their business over this? I'd really make them choose between their business and their son's obsession. What they do with that choice is on them. Elena was quiet for a moment. You scare me sometimes. I know. But you also make me feel safer than I've felt in years. Good. That's the point. Is it? Or is the point that you get to exercise power and call it protection? Adrian turned to look at her, and Elena saw something like hurt flash across his face before he controlled it. You think that's what this is? A power trip? I think you're used to controlling situations, and I think having someone to protect gives you a reason to keep doing it. Maybe, but that doesn't make the protection less real. No, Elena agreed, but it does make me wonder what happens when I don't need protecting anymore. Do you still want me? Or was I just another problem to solve? The question hung between them, sharp and necessary. Adrian was quiet for a long time, and Elena could see him wrestling with something, pride maybe, or the vulnerability of being honest about what he wanted. I don't know, he said finally. I've never had to think past the solving before. The honesty surprised her. That's not a great answer. It's the truth. You wanted transparency. That's what it looks like. Elena studied him, this man who'd turned her life inside out and couldn't promise her anything beyond the present moment. So where does that leave us? Figuring it out as we go, together, like you said, partners. It wasn't the answer Elena wanted, but it was the one she believed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard Holbrook. My clients would like to propose a meeting, tomorrow, 10 a.m. My office, to discuss terms for mutual resolution. Elena showed it to Adrian. He read it and nodded slowly. They're ready to deal, he said. Should I go? We go. Both of us. Adrian's expression was calculating. They want to negotiate surrender but make it look like compromise. Fine. Let them save face. As long as Caleb stays away from you, I don't care what story they tell themselves. The meeting took place in a conference room that cost more per hour than Elena made in a week. Richard Holbrook sat at the head of the table, flanked by Caleb's parents, Harrison and Margaret Bennett, both wearing expressions that suggested they'd rather be anywhere else. Adrian and Elena sat across from them, a physical and metaphorical divide. "Thank you for coming," Richard began. "My clients wanted an opportunity to discuss how we might resolve this situation in a way that's acceptable to all parties." "All parties except Caleb," Adrian noted, "who I notice isn't here." "My son is receiving treatment," Margaret said stiffly. "Professional help for his issues." "Anger management?" Elena asked. "Among other things." Harrison's jaw was tight. "We've come to recognize that Caleb's behavior has been unacceptable, and we want to make amends." "Amends how?" Richard slid a document across the table. "A formal apology from Caleb, delivered through counsel, a commitment to maintain no contact with Miss Brooks, and a settlement to compensate for the distress this situation has caused." Elena looked at the number on the settlement offer and felt sick. "You think money fixes this?" "We think it acknowledges harm and provides restitution," Richard said carefully. "What I think," Adrian said, his voice cold, "is that you're trying to buy your son out of consequences. Again. Just like you did with Rachel Chen." Harrison's face flushed. "That was different. It was exactly the same. Caleb hurt someone. You paid to make it go away, and he learned that money can erase accountability. Well, not this time." "Then what do you want?" Margaret's voice cracked slightly. "We're trying to make this right." Elena spoke up. "I want a restraining order. I want it on public record that Caleb is not allowed within 500 feet of me, my home, or my workplace. I want that violation to come with actual legal consequences, not just more money changing hands." "We can agree to that," Richard said quickly. "And I want the investigations into your business practices to continue until they've run their course. No calling in favors to make them disappear." Elena looked directly at Harrison. "You don't get to hide behind money and connections anymore. If your developments violated codes, you face those consequences." Harrison's hands clenched on the table. "That will destroy. Then you should have built your empire on something more solid than corruption and shortcuts." Elena's voice was steady. "Those are my terms. Take them or don't." Richard looked at the Bennetts, who had a silent conversation through eye contact alone. Finally, Margaret nodded. "We accept," Richard said. Adrian leaned back. "Good. Then we'll have our lawyers draw up the formal agreements. The restraining order gets filed tomorrow, and if Caleb violates it, even once, all of this goes public and we stop being reasonable." "Understood." The meeting ended quickly after that. As they left the building, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Lightness. Not freedom, exactly, but the beginning of it. "You were brutal in there," Adrian said, and there was admiration in his voice. "I learned from the best." "I didn't teach you that." "No, I figured it out myself." Elena looked up at him. "Turns out being scared for long enough makes you realize the only thing worse than confrontation is continuing to live in fear of it." They walked in silence for a block, letting the cold air clear the tension from the conference room. "What happens now?" Elena asked. "Now we wait for the paperwork to clear. Make sure Caleb actually stays in treatment and abides by the order. And if he doesn't, we handle it." "We handle it," Adrian confirmed. Elena stopped walking, and Adrian stopped with her. "I want to go home. To my apartment. Not yours, not your office. Mine." Adrian's expression was careful. "You sure you're ready?" "No, but I need to reclaim it. I need to prove to myself that I can exist in my own space without being afraid. Then let's get you home." The apartment felt different when Elena walked through the door. Not because anything had changed physically. The same furniture, the same stacks of books, the same art projects scattered across every surface. But because she was different. The woman who'd left this place weeks ago had been running. The woman returning was choosing to stand still. Adrian had insisted on having it swept by his security team first, checking locks and windows and making sure nothing had been disturbed. Elena let him because she understood it wasn't about controlling her. It was about giving them both peace of mind. When they were finally alone, Elena stood in her living room and took a deep breath. "This is weird," she said. "What is?" "Being back here with you, in my space instead of yours." She turned to look at him. "Do you want to stay? Do you want me to?" "I don't know." Part of me wants the space to process everything, but part of me doesn't want to be alone. Adrian moved closer, and Elena felt the now familiar pull between them, attraction and trust, and something deeper she was still afraid to name. I can stay on the couch, he offered, just so you're not alone. No expectations. Elena almost laughed. When have you ever slept on a couch? There's a first time for everything. But she didn't want him on the couch. She wanted him close, wanted the solid reality of him to anchor her while she figured out how to be the version of herself that didn't live in constant fear. She took his hand and led him to her bedroom. What happened next wasn't dramatic or perfect. It was fumbling and honest and human. Two people who'd been circling each other for weeks finally admitting they wanted the same thing. Elena had spent so long being afraid of intimacy, of letting someone close enough to hurt her, that being with Adrian felt like jumping off a cliff. But this time, she trusted she wouldn't fall alone. Afterward, they lay in the darkness of her bedroom, Elena's head on Adrian's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Tell me something true, she said quietly. Like what? Like why you really helped me. That first night at the Monarch. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. You want the honest answer? Always. Because you reminded me of someone. Who? My sister. His voice was careful, like he was handling something fragile. She was in a relationship like yours, with someone who made her small, and I didn't see it until it was too late. Elena lifted her head to look at him. What happened? She left him eventually, but it took years. And by the time she did, she'd lost so much of herself that I barely recognized her. Adrian's jaw was tight. When I saw you in that lounge, counting breaths, trying not to panic while your ex circled, I saw her, and I decided I wouldn't walk away this time. So I was a second chance. You were your own person. But yeah, maybe part of why I got involved was wanting to do it right this time. Elena settled back against his chest. Is she okay now? Your sister? She's better. Married someone decent. Has a life that doesn't involve looking over her shoulder. He paused. She told me once that the hardest part wasn't leaving. It was believing she deserved better. That took longer. I get that. I know you do. They were quiet for a while, just breathing together in the darkness until Elena spoke again. I'm not completely okay, you know. This doesn't fix everything. I know. I'm probably going to have trust issues for a while, and moments where I panic for no reason, and days where I resent that I needed help to get free. That's allowed. And you're going to have moments where you want to control things, where you make decisions without asking because that's what you're used to, and I'm going to push back and it's going to cause fights. Probably. So this thing between us, it's not going to be easy. Nothing worth having is. Elena smiled against his chest. That's a terrible cliché. Doesn't make it less true. She fell asleep like that, wrapped in safety and possibility, and when she woke the next morning, Adrian was still there. The restraining order was granted within a week. Caleb didn't contest it. His family's statement to the press was carefully worded, acknowledgement that mistakes were made and commitment to ensuring such situations never occur again. The investigations into their business practices continued, but quietly, away from headlines and public spectacle. Rachel Chen did an interview with a major news outlet telling her full story. Other women came forward with similar accounts. The pattern was undeniable, and while Caleb never faced criminal charges, settlements, and NDAs, and the passage of time had made that impossible, his reputation was destroyed in ways that money couldn't fix. Elena returned to work at the Art Institute. The first day was hard, walking through the building where Caleb had shown up, where her private trauma had nearly spilled into her professional life. But Jessica was there, and despite her earlier skepticism, she hugged Elena tight and said, I'm glad you're okay. I'm getting there, Elena replied. She and Adrian settled into something that wasn't quite a traditional relationship, but worked for them. He had his world, the deals and leverage and careful orchestration of power. She had hers, the quiet restoration of forgotten art, the slow process of bringing light back to things that had been in darkness. And where those worlds overlapped, they built something new. It wasn't perfect. They fought about boundaries and control and the difference between protection and possession. Elena pushed back when Adrian tried to make decisions for her, and Adrian struggled with letting her face risks he could eliminate. But they learned each other's languages, found compromises that honored both their needs. 3 months after the restraining order was granted, Elena hosted her first art show. Small, intimate, featuring pieces she'd restored alongside some of her own work. Photographs and mixed media exploring themes of fracture and repair, damage and resilience. Adrian came to the opening standing in the back of the gallery, watching Elena talk to visitors about her process. She caught his eye across the room and smiled, and he smiled back, and it was such a simple moment, except it wasn't. It was proof that she could have both. Could be with someone who saw her strength and wanted her anyway. Could build a life that didn't require her to make herself smaller. Caleb violated the restraining order once, 6 months later. Showed up outside Elena's apartment, drunk and angry. And demanding she talk to him. Adrian's security team was there within minutes. The police arrived shortly after. Caleb spent the night in jail and woke up to his family's lawyers telling him he was moving to Arizona for an extended period of reflection and treatment. He never came back. Elena didn't follow his life after that. Didn't Google his name or check his social media. He became what he should have been all along, someone from her past who no longer had power over her present. She and Adrian moved in together eventually, into a space that was neither his penthouse nor her walk-up, but something they chose together. A brownstone in Lincoln Park, with good light and enough room for Elena's art projects and Adrian's need for order. They learned how to coexist, her chaos and his control finding balance. It wasn't a fairy tale. Elena still had bad days where anxiety crept back in. Adrian still had moments where his protective instincts overrode his better judgment. But they were building something real, something that acknowledged the mess and chose it anyway. On a rainy Tuesday, almost a year after they'd met, Elena stood at the window of their bedroom, watching the water streak down the glass. Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That night at the Monarch, how scared I was." "You didn't show it." "I was terrified. Of Caleb. Of asking you to dance. Of everything that might go wrong." She turned in his arms to face him. "I'm glad I did it anyway." "Yeah?" "Yeah." Elena reached up to touch his face. "I spent so long trying to stay safe by staying small. And it turns out the only way to actually be safe was to take up space, to fight back, to choose people who saw me fighting and joined me instead of telling me to stop." Adrian kissed her forehead. "You know, I'm not a good man, right? I do bad things for what I tell myself are good reasons. I know, but you're a good man for me, and that's what matters. Is it enough?" Elena thought about the question, about the woman she'd been, afraid, controlled, counting breaths to survive. About the woman she was becoming, still scared sometimes, still learning to trust, but choosing courage over comfort. About the future they were building together, messy and imperfect and entirely theirs. "Yeah," she said. "It's enough." Because here's what Elena had learned. Safety doesn't come from hiding or from finding someone to hide behind. It comes from knowing your own strength and choosing to stand with people who see that strength and amplify it instead of diminishing it. Love isn't about one person saving another. It's about two people deciding to face the world together, bringing their own weapons to the fight. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help without losing yourself in the process. Is admit you can't do it alone while refusing to let anyone else do it for you. Is finding the space between dependence and independence where partnership actually lives. Elena had spent her whole life believing she had to choose, be strong or be loved, be safe or be free. Adrian had shown her that those weren't oppositions. They were ingredients in the same recipe, and getting the proportions right took time and patience and a willingness to mess up and try again. They didn't live happily ever after because life doesn't work that way. But they lived, fully, honestly, with eyes open to the complexity of what they'd built. And on the days when it was hard, when old fears resurfaced or new challenges emerged, they remembered that first dance in a rain-soaked lounge, when a terrified woman had asked a dangerous man for help, and he'd said yes. Not because he needed to save her, but because she'd needed someone to stand beside her while she saved herself. And in the end, that made all the difference.